So, shocker, the progressive voice actually voted. The progressive voice voted incorrectly. He voted against the recall. But, half should vote against. The other half should vote for it and vote for Kapolovitz, Danny Kapolovitz. Not Jeremiah Marciniak. Don't waste your vote on Jeremiah Marciniak, God damn it. Why would you vote for Jeremy Marciniak? Okay? So, the progressive voice, he's already voted in the California recall election, and he already sent it out a long fucking time ago. Now, Netflix is behind the recall. The CEO has donated a shit ton of fucking money. They put his name on all the... So, Netflix, who wants to get this Gavin Newsom out of office? Well, the Republicans, number one, and number two, Netflix. Netflix hates the fuck out of Gavin Newsom. I don't know what the fuck Gavin Newsom did to Netflix, but Netflix wants Gavin Newsom out by Halloween. Okay, so this is from KCal9, KCal9.com. It's YouTube. Audio, Kevin Paffrath. Debate.
Paffrath has millions of views on his YouTube videos where he offers financial and real estate advice. We've done incredibly well. He's also the highest polling Democrat in a list of more than 40 recall candidates, but the state Democratic Party is not supporting him. We need a governor who's actually going to do what he says he's going to do. On other issues, Paffrath says the state needs a massive pipeline from California to the Mississippi River to ease the drought, and
which is the dumbest idea on the history of the planet. You know what? Why just get a pipeline to the Mississippi River? Why just stop there? Why just have a pipeline to the Mississippi River? Why not take it all the way to the Great Lakes? And then why not just take it to the Great Lakes? Take it to the Atlantic Ocean. You need a pipeline, California, to the Atlantic Ocean. You get that Atlantic Ocean to California, then you're set. I mean, you might have to desalinate it, take all that salt out. But once you get that Atlantic Ocean, you get some of that Mississippi River, get some of that Ohio River, get some of the Great Lakes, get some of the Allegheny River. Make sure you just take everybody's water all across the damn country. Just take everybody's goddamn water all across the goddamn country. Jesus Christ, you don't have no mountaintops, you don't have no H2, you don't have no hydrogen or oxygen, lying around in the air somewhere.
And he hammered his GOP rivals on the housing crisis.
Kevin Faulconer mentions that we should build along our transit corridors. That's not enough. That's not enough.
That's
we need a governor who's actually going to do what he says he's going to do.
On other issues, Paffrath says the state needs a massive pipeline from California to the Mississippi River to ease the drought, and he hammered his GOP rivals on the housing crisis.
Kevin Faulconer mentions that we should build along our transit corridors. That's not enough. That's not enough. It's not that it will create a drop in the bucket for our housing crisis.
Former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer hit back.
It's not the time for on-the-job training for YouTube. Somebody that's never actually had to get legislation across, actually had to get the units constructed and built, and actually take the stance to get housing constructed in California. I think that's a clear difference between you and me, my friend.
That's a good criticism. So that was Kevin Faulconer. Kevin Faulconer criticized Kevin Paffrath. There was 3 Kevins on the stage. You had 4 people, 3 Republicans, 1 Democrat. The Democratic Party didn't want anybody to run, so anybody that's running in the race that claims to be a Democrat is not officially sanctioned by the Democratic Party, so that's why they hadn't been allowed to go to the debates, because they're not allowed in, or they're not, officially allowed in the... So anyways, he is number 2. Kevin Paffrath is polling at number 2. Larry Elder, number 1. Kevin Paffrath is polling at number 2. The other Kevin is Kevin Riley, I think. Kevin Riley, and then John Cox. So you got John Cox, Mr. Whitehair Man. You got Kevin Riley. You got Kevin Paffrath, and then you have Kevin Faulconer. And really, Kevin Faulconer, Kevin Riley, John Cox, these are all forgettable people. But Kevin Faulconer, he had some fucking good lines there. He says, this is not a time for on-the-job training. It's not a time for on-the-job training, motherfucker. What are you, just a temp? you're a temp. Why don't you, go to the governors, in goddamn Oregon or Washington and, be an intern for them for a year or two so that way you kind of know what the fuck you're doing. You want to go take the governor's chair? You want to go pass legislation and, the judicial branch and all that shit? Do you have any clue what you're doing? Do you have any idea? And so, on-the-job training.
GOP rivals on the housing crisis.
Kevin Faulconer mentions that we should build along our transit quarters. That's not enough. That's not enough. It's not that it will create a drop in.
Now, I guess Faulconer, but Faulconer, that actually reminds me of Paffrath. Was it J something Paffrath? But something the love song of J. Alfred Paffrath, a poem by T.S. Eliot. Just a point where he just says something, the falcon becomes the falconer, and then the falcon becomes the falconer. The falcon becomes the falconer? What in the hell are you talking about?
Up in the bucket for our housing crisis.
Former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer hit back.
It's not the time for on-the-job training. For YouTube, somebody that's never actually had to get legislation across, actually had to get the units constructed and built, and actually take the stance to get housing constructed in California. I think that's a clear difference between you and me, my friend.
The GOP challengers sounded off on familiar themes like cutting back state bureaucracy.
That was awesome, Kevin Faulconer. So essentially that was Kevin Faulconer's, I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. And you, sir, are no Jack Kennedy.
Financial and real estate advice. We've done incredibly well. He's also the highest polling Democrat in a list of more than 40 recall candidates, but the state Democratic Party is not supporting him.
We need a governor who's actually going to do what he says he's going to do.
On other issues, Paffrath says the state needs a massive pipeline from California to the Mississippi River to ease the drought, and he hammered his GOP rivals on the housing crisis.
Kevin Faulconer mentions that we should build along our transit quarters. That's not enough. That's not enough. It's not that it will create a drop in the bucket for our housing crisis.
Former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer hit back.
It's not the time for on-the-job training. For YouTube, somebody that's never actually had to get legislation across, actually had to get the units constructed and built, and actually take the stance to get housing constructed in California. I think that's a clear difference between you and me, my friend.
The GOP challengers sounded off on familiar themes like cutting back state bureaucracy.
We shouldn't have most of the boards and commissions we have. We're going to have an audit of every single agency, starting with the EDD, and we just learned of a homeless audit that was blistering in terms of its criticism of Governor Newsom.
Assemblyman Kevin Kiley on whether he would accept the results of the recall vote.
There is a lawsuit right now to try to cancel the election, and there are people in Gavin Newsom's inner circle who seem to be supportive of this effort. They have tried every step of the way.
It's a poem called The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats, 1865 to 1939. Turning and turning in the widening gear. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the sinner cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming, hardly are those words out when a vast image of the Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs while all about it real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking candle, and what rough beast its hour come round at last slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Turning and turning in the widening gear, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the sinner cannot hold. The mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Ay, 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 ay. So Faulconer, Kevin Faulconer, he had his And you, my sir, are no Jack Kennedy. And actually, he has called himself a JFK Democrat, which he don't know what the fuck he's talking about because he's pretending that JFK was a conservative. And JFK had a lot of progressive stances, but, yeah, I don't know. He's confident, he's cocky, he's arrogant. This is, Paffrath. And it's usually the people that think they can do it that can get it done. He's 29, so I feel like if somebody really takes, an interest and writes it like a good article or something and says, here's, what you did good, here's what you did wrong, and he really, pays attention to it, I think that he could evolve into something, that's a lot better than what he is. He's just all over the place. He's everywhere, all over the place, here, there, everywhere. And he wants, he's got, ideas, some, good ideas, some bad ideas. But that's what I meant. Not the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot, like he knows poetry. W.B. Yeats. T.S. Eliot ain't no W.B. Yeats and the Second Coming. G-Y-R-E, is that gear? Yeah, like you know. You don't know.